In today's video, I'm going to walk you through something we call the process power grid. This is so important because so many businesses rise and fall to the level of their minimum standards. And oftentimes what happens is, clients come in and they don't necessarily have a process implementation system that actually gets them a continued result every single time. Like some things are going to be piecemealed. And today, what I'm going to walk you through is how to actually build a standard operating procedure, what we specifically do in our business in order to make sure that we have clarity and confidence so that if we were to hand things off, we have the ability in order to drive the results we're looking for. So this is called the process power grid. Now, before I kind of get to this, I've been helping companies over the last couple of years really kind of automate their systems and automate their processes to a point where they have radical clarity on what they need to do so that they can actually automate, so they can delegate, and they can remove non-needle moving activities in their business. And one of the things that's so important around the process power grid is a lot of people want to implement ChatGPT, they want to implement some sort of AI into their business, but without it written out on a page, there's no way to automate what you don't know needs to happen. So I want to walk you through three core pillars inside, and I'm actually going to take you inside of a process that we implement even in our own business. I want to show you everything that is actually automated in our business and how there's different trigger points that actually drive results consistently. So we save time, we save money, and we can ultimately not have to hire multiple people in order to actually implement a repeatable process. So this is called the process power grid. Let's get into it. So first and foremost, everything we do inside of our business lives off of one Google Doc. Why one Google Doc? Because when you have to go to multiple different places in order to find an answer, you ultimately, that's considered decision fatigue, and you end up doing nothing because you have this decision fatigue that ultimately, what you'll find with, virtual assistants, what you'll find with, buyer's agents, listing agents, even staff on your team, if they don't know where to go, they're going to consistently ask you. And a lot of the way that we built our processes has been built off of hey, here was a problem that we had in the past. This is no longer a problem that we deal with because we have all of our client success SOPs of our programs in one Google Doc. And I'm going to show you how that works. Now, an effective Google Doc that you essentially put together as an SOP, a standard operating procedure, has this. It has a what, it has a why, it has a how, it has all the action items, and it also has what we call sub-item owners, meaning if there's a specific task that needs to get done, all of that information is on one page, or it's on that one page and it links out. Let me show you what I mean. So this is an example of one of our Triz onboarding SOPs. So we use a program called Monday.com, and we built our entire process. You can see along the sides here, here's every single SOP, every single standard operating procedure in our company. So when it comes to client success, our company has one document that they go to get all of the answers. So this is what essentially it looks like. So all the sub-items, these are sub-items, we put them in here. The reason we put them in here into a Google Excel sheet is we can automate this process. So you can see that these are all the things that need to happen. And you can see here there is an assigned owner to each specific item. So this is the what, this is the how, this is the why, this is the impact, this is the action items, and then all of your sub-items are all there. So if we want to do the process really well, we need a Google Doc. We need a what, we need a how, we need a why, we need action items, and we need sub-item owners. Who's actually going to own that specific task? When I call a sub-item, we use a project management tool called Monday.com, and they're called sub-items. That's what we call them, sub-items. If you're using Asana, using another terminology, you could call them just task. Who is going to own that specific task? Who is going to be the task owner? And then what are those action items? Why this is so important is why you put the what, the how, the why in there is it's great to know the overarching goal of what needs to happen, the how, but ultimately, why are they doing it this specific way? When you spell that out, when you hand that to a virtual assistant, when you hand that to somebody on your team, they have a reasoning why you want it done a specific way. So we use one Google Doc. What, how, why, action item, sub-item owners. The next thing that we do in the process power grid is we have something we call a Miro board. So a Miro board consists of four things. We have a clarity flow chart. We have a what comes next. We have any scripts that we use attached to that flowchart. And then we also do a ton of refinement and retooling on that Miro board. So let me walk you through what that would look like practically. So this would be an example of a Miro board. So when a new Triz client comes in, they essentially book the kickoff call. What this allows us to do is it allows us to map out visually what happens from point to point A to point B to point C, so on and so forth. If there are any specific decisions that need to be made, so for example, has the client had or not, we want to essentially use a diamond to identify what needs to happen. Because what this allows us to visually do at a macro level is it allows us to look at what is working and what's not working. Where are the broken links? What we're trying to do in the refinement and the retooling is we're over time, once a month, what we do in our team is we do what we call an operations deep dive. In the operations deep dive, it's about a 4-hour meeting that we meet with our team, and we just look at the Google Doc, we look at the Miro board in order to identify, are there any hidden gaps that we're not aware of? The Google Doc allows us to get all of our ideas out of our head and onto paper, and the Miro board allows us, what it does is it allows us to actually take a look at the entire process from front to start in a more visual way to essentially give us clarity. It's a flowchart of clarity to allow us to know, okay, maybe here there's a step, there are things happening from here to here that, are causing issues. For example, right now, in our business, what we realize is there's 3 emails that go out. Those 3 emails cause confusion and clarity. There's a lot of information we try to essentially give our clients, and we identified in our last operations meeting is like we're trying to create those 3 emails into one. So now what it allows us to do is say, okay, the client books a kickoff call. Well, ideally the onboarding email that they get should be the same as the kickoff call. So it allows us to identify bottlenecks in the business that are creating confusion, and it allows us to refine and retool. So the reason why we created a Google Doc around a process and we create a Miro board around a process, like onboarding is a process. The reason that we do this, and we don't just do the Google Doc or the Miro board, the reason we do it too is because some of us are written learners and we identify gaps written, and some of us are visual and we identify gaps in the process visually. So the reason why every single process needs to have both a Google Doc, one Google Doc where you have one central repository of information, and one Miro board is it allows us to understand where the hidden gaps are. And then what it also does is if there are specific scripts, so for example, if you at 45 days in, you have somebody that needs to follow up at 45 days, well, that becomes a sub item that goes as a task inside of Monday or inside of Asana, but it also, the script is here. So they know, so your team knows exactly where to go in order to find this, because a confused mind stalls. So how do we fix confusion? We fix confusion with clarity. And how do we create clarity? We create it with one Google Doc and one Miro board. The last thing we want to do is we want to have our project management software. So we want to be able, in order to automate, in order to delegate, in order to, create due dates, in order to have a communication rhythm, we need a project management software. The 2 we recommend in our business is, number 1, either use Monday.com, that's what we use, or use a program like Asana. Now, a project management software, what it allows us to do is allows us to manage that workflow in a way that we can communicate back and forth rather than having email, rather than having using Slack. We have a compository of information in one stationary space. So what this looks like, for example, is all of these sub items. As soon as a sale happens, the only reason we're able to know how to do this is because when a sale happens, there's automation that kick off in the back end to essentially send all the information to Monday. Now, essentially when the information gets sent to Monday, what we've automated is, say for example, you have a client open house. What you can do is once you have one stationary process, you can essentially automate all of these. You can automate all of these sub items, and you can assign the owner to that specific thing. So I can look on that client's account and I can see, okay, these are all the statuses of the things that need to happen in order to actually create a great result for our clients. So that essentially is your project management software. But in order to automate, you first need to map out from A to Z the 60, the 50, the 30, the 100 things that need to happen in order to actually create the process. If you do these 3 things, if you have one Google Doc, you have one Miro board, and you have one project management software, you will create better results for your business because you'll have radical clarity. Like I said, all of your SOPs, what I recommend is putting them in one Google Doc so that all of your SOPs live here. So like if you, for example, if you had an open house SOP, if you had a client referral SOP, everything should live under one Google Doc, and it should essentially say what, how, why, action item, sub item owners. You should have a Miro board for every single SOP. So if you have an open house SOP, you should have an open house Miro board. And if you have, and then your project management software, you should have a separate board. So I would have a separate board under here that essentially says open houses, and then I would have all the names of the open houses listed here with all the sub items to make sure that nothing is ever missed. You know, one of our good friends, Sharon Srivatsa, says this consistently. He says, good process drives good results. If you want to have a great process, I call this the process power grid. One Google Doc, one Miro board, one project management software, and that's how we drive real financial results in our business, and we get the results that we desire because we can't assess what isn't written down. There's no way to, if we can't measure what we don't track. This is how we track whether a process is working or isn't working. Now, there are meetings that should probably happen in order to take a look at this, but step number 1 would be create the process. Step number 2 is implement the process, and phase number 3 is refine the process, and those require meetings. And that's essentially why on a monthly basis we do something we call an operations deep dive, where we look at one process from front to back and we have a good understanding and we just refine and retool that one process. So stop working on everything and stop trying to work on everything and put your focus into one thing, and that's where you create really great results. We'll see you in the next video.